how to help yourself when things aren't exactly going right? Or do you know how to tell what the warning signs are of something not going quite right in your body? Or maybe in your life in a broader sense? Well, I want to talk a little bit about that today based on some personal experiences that I have had and, growing in my wellness journey as I have over, the last decade or more. And I want to share some of that with you today and hopefully inspire you to be able to do some of the same things yourself. So thank you for joining me today for the Cultivating Calmness podcast. So this past weekend, my daughter had a gymnastics competition, and part of the setup, I guess you would say the preparing for, was to have the parents volunteer to help set up and run this event. Well, I volunteered to help set up. And so basically there were 2 truckloads of equipment for this gymnastics competition. And there were many, many, many gyms that came and were present. I think there were several represented in just helping to set up. We had to unload 2 semis full of a bunch of stuff. And if you were unaware, this past Friday was when here in central Ohio and around the surrounding areas, we had 60+ mile per hour winds. So you can imagine unloading giant gym mats, among other things, in the wind like that. We got our workout just standing there, waiting in line to take things off the truck. A lot of balancing, bracing, had to turn away because there was like just dirt and stuff and things blowing. That's really not the point of this story. I'll get there. But one of the things that needed done was, if you know anything about gymnastics, they have uneven bars, for the gymnast. And what holds those down is like a counterweight system. So they used these like 50-pound cement blocks, and each corner had at least 1,000 pounds. So the whole thing had 4,000 pounds of cement blocks holding it down. Well, those cement blocks were on a pallet, and we had to move them from the pallet to the area where they needed held down one at a time. And let's see, there were 4, so that means there were 8. That means there were 16 1,000 pounds, if I'm doing my math right, 4, 8, 12. Yeah, there were 16,000 pounds worth of these bricks. And, wasn't my favorite thing to do, but I did help with that. And the whole time I'm like, lift with your legs, not with your back. But I was counting because I was like, I've been working on, working out more and being more planful and purposeful with workouts and diet. And so I was like, well, I want to know how much I'm lifting here today. And at my estimation, give or take, I can't do math backwards. I moved about 4,500 pounds of bricks. And around that time, there was still, I think, 4,000 pounds left to move. And I had been there longer than they had expected, and which is fine, but I could feel my back starting to hurt. I could feel like I was just getting tired. I hadn't eaten. So I knew I needed to like get home and get some kind of food. So I did end up, like calling it quits. I was like, waving the flag. I'm done. But that was me being able to notice the warning signs, I would say, of my body and what I needed to do and what I need to listen to. I think sometimes we can push ourselves like, I can do it, right? I could have stayed. I could have helped to move more bricks. Would it have been the end of the world? Probably not. Would I have been in more pain? Probably. No matter how much I said I was going to lift with my legs, I could feel it in my back. I mean, I could feel it in my legs as well, and my arms and my shoulders. I don't have a lot of strength. I'm not like lifting 50-pound weights at home, at least not yet. Maybe that'll be something I'm able to do in the future. I don't know. So I would say there was probably a point in time where I wasn't paying attention or where I wouldn't have necessarily noticed the signs and symptoms. And so I'm just using this as an example as, how you can start to pay attention and notice your body and know like, when you need to stop, when you need to do something about it. And that's across the board, whether it's something you've eaten, whether it's like anxiety symptoms that are showing up, depressive symptoms that are showing up, like thought changes, worry, negative thinking, whether it's the aches and pains that come with weather. Here in Ohio, it's gone from like we had 70-degree days to windy days to now it's, below 30 degrees outside. And so the weather is just bouncing back and forth. And that can wreak havoc on some people's bodies. It can cause migraines with the pressure in the air. With it becoming spring, there's symptoms of people start to get allergy symptoms. So there's lots of things that are going on. And on this health journey that I've had, I would say that, and it may be the same for a lot of you, is that I didn't used to eat very healthy. And I would say until recently, I wasn't eating super healthy. I thought I was. I make my kids eat healthier than I eat. And that made me think maybe that I was eating healthier, realizing that I wasn't eating as healthy as I needed to be eating. And so I have been, purposely making those choices and that effort in the last 2 months or so. I'm noticing those physical, like the way I feel, and I, also recognizing that any physical changes take time and not to give up. So I know those things are coming. Those are things that I want to change, but also that those things will take time and continued effort. So it's easy, when you're trying to make a change to say, hey, I'm not seeing it in a week or 2 weeks or, 2 months. And therefore I'm going to stop whatever it is that I'm doing. Often change takes a lot of time, especially if you're going about it in a more natural way, where we're not taking, maybe certain medications or certain, pills or surgeries or things that are going to make some of those things happen faster. Oftentimes, certain medications will make certain things go away. Like to say a headache, right? If I had a headache, I can take a Tylenol and the headache will likely, go away pretty quickly. But if I take the more natural route, that headache may persist, depending on what's going on, right? If it's weather related, I might not be able to change much of that. If it's food related, do I need to eat something? Do I need to stop eating something? I know that works for me sometimes, but when it's like illness related, it's really hard for me to alleviate headache symptoms. They tend to get really intense and really painful, but related to something else, I can fix that with typically some kind of herb or tea or something, or food and water, hydration. And so that is not a immediate fix, right? My headache doesn't just go away within, a half hour of taking something. Sometimes it can. But natural ways of doing things like diet and exercise changes don't always result in immediate weight loss, muscle gain, shaping and tightening and toning and things like that. They can for some people, and for other people, they may not. So again, like sticking with whatever the change is, if it's thinking negatively, the negative thinking isn't just going to go away because a couple times I reversed my thinking and changed my thinking, and now I had some positive thoughts. You have to train yourself to do that, and it takes effort and it takes time and purposeful action to be able to make that change stick. And then you may notice, oh, I do think more positively more often than I think negatively. Oh, and I catch myself more often. But that happens with that consistency and, doing that over and over and over again, and making an effort to do it and make sure you're doing it. So I say all of this because I knew my back was hurting. I knew there were things that I needed to do so that when I woke up Saturday, I wasn't in a lot of pain. So in the past, 10, 15, 20 years ago, I would have just gone to bed, right? I maybe would have done some stretches, but would have just gone to bed. Would have woken up and been like in a lot of pain, right? Sore, achy, can't, oh, I can't walk, I can't do stuff. And I had stuff to do. So when I came home, after this, I got something to eat, but I took an Epsom salt bath. So that's good for like sore muscles, illness, relaxation, things like that. Hot, kind of loosen up the muscles. And then now I don't have it here. I forgot to bring it from home, but I have a similar product to this. This is Earthly Wellness. They're located actually in 𝐂𝐻𝐻𝐿 area in Columbus, Ohio. This is actually vitamin D cream, but it's a very similar look. It looks, kind of like this. I think they have bigger packages than this. This is their, I think they're this is their 4-ounce jar, excuse me. This is their vitamin D cream, but I used their, I think they call it Magic Muscle Ease. And I've had it on my shelf at home for a while, but I hadn't really ever needed it. But all the way home, I was like, I got to put that on. I got to put that on. I got to put that on. And what it did, I literally slathered it from knees to like shoulders. I had my husband help me because I couldn't reach all the areas, but I just like rubbed it all over because I knew those areas were going to be probably in pain or had the potential to be in pain. And what that does is it helps to ease, like as the title, as the name of the product says, it's a Magic Muscle Ease. It eases your muscles, helps to reduce some of that inflammation and that pain because of the herbs that are in it. Let's see. So this is vitamin D. Here I had it in my office. It's I don't know how clear it looks here, but this is a little separated. All you do is warm it up a little bit and those beads will melt right back into the product. You can use this for vitamin D. And it does have a little fishy smell because it comes from, I believe, cod liver oil. That's the main ingredient: cod liver oil, emu oil, avocado oil, mango butter, and Candelia wax. That's for the vitamin D. The Magic Muscle Ease had similar. I know it had mango butter, Candelia wax. It had arnica, and I know there was at least 1 or 2 other ingredients to help with your muscles. So you rub that on and it, seeps into your skin and absorbs. Same with the vitamin D cream. So if you are low vitamin D like me, you could use this as well. Supplements help with vitamin D, but your skin is your biggest organ, so it absorbs. So if you need vitamin D, you can get yourself some lotion. If you have kids, they're low vitamin D, you could potentially look into how this could be helpful for them. For example, it says a half to 1 teaspoon on the thighs or the stomach. Those are considered like your fat-rich areas. Each teaspoon contains approximately 150 IUs of vitamin D and 1,500 IUs of vitamin A, trace amounts of vitamin E and K2. And all of those things are necessary for your health. But I did this. And then the last thing that I did, knowing that red light and near-infrared light help with recovery and help to, in healing. I did red light in several areas, I didn't time it, probably at least a half an hour spread out. I set it on my back and I just kind of sat there, watched some TV. I think I did some, under my legs. And then I think I moved it to like the sides of my back so that I could hit all those areas. And then when I woke up Saturday, I was feeling pretty good. Like not a lot of sore muscles. I was even worried. I texted my friend, she's a chiropractor, and I was like, I might need an emergency session this weekend. This is what I just did. And I didn't really need it. So I was able to pay attention to the science, but then I also knew some of the things that I could do. Whereas 10 or so years ago, I wouldn't have known those things and I wouldn't have had those things in my house. Now I have those things in my house. And so you don't necessarily need all of those things to help you recover, although you learn over time. I've learned these things over time. I didn't just, always know them. I picked up on things here and there and learned how to help my body. Just like when I start to feel a cold coming on, if I start to feel the littlest tickle in my throat, I'm on it. I've got the different herbs and I've got the different vitamins and I'm taking them. And I know in some instances, by the time you feel those symptoms, it may be a little too late. Like the virus or whatever it is already brewing and wreaking havoc in your system. But a lot of times I have been able to kick it, right? I take a bunch of vitamin C, for example, to fight that little tickle. And, by the end of the day, I'm not feeling it anymore. So I know that those things work, but I also know that I didn't know that. There was once a time, I think I was in grad school for counseling, and I had like a sinus infection for like over a month, well over a month. My nose was like red. I was constantly blowing my nose. I had used to I would go get antibiotics, and it would happen so often that it happened often enough that I would go to the minute clinic and get a prescription for an antibiotic for my sinus infection that I could feel coming on. And they would say, wait 3 days, at least 3 days, or it was a certain number of days before you come in. So they'd ask, has it been 3 days? And I would lie because I'm like, I know what this is and I know I need an antibiotic. And at some point in time that changed. I don't know what it was. But when I would feel it coming on, I would take lots of vitamin C and it would go away. And so I don't know that I've used an antibiotic since that time. Antibiotic use is a whole other, topic of discussion and one I'm still learning about. And, but I didn't need the antibiotic. I needed to pay attention to my body. I needed to pay attention to the signs, and I needed help in knowing what to do and how to heal it without necessarily having to go to medication. When you're feeling anxious, do you know what the signs are? Everybody's body does things a little differently. Even myself, I'm a therapist, and there have been symptoms that I've had where, I'm like, why does that keep happening? And then I'm like, I realize, I think that's anxiety. And I have to check myself. So I may clench my jaw and it may get a little shaky. When maybe certain topics or certain things that are going on. And now I know if that's happening, I'm like, oh, breathe, release the jaw, all right, let it go. And I try to relax and breathe through some of that and recognize hey, what's going on that this is coming up for me. Same thing with food. In eating healthy, actually just in the last few days, I haven't had much sugar, but I wanted to try this cookie from a local cookie shop, which are awesome, way better than Crumble, if I have to say so. I do have to say so. They use better ingredients, but even though they use better ingredients, I still feel like that probably messed up my gut a little bit. I haven't had much sugar, haven't had much, non-healthy or real food. Real food being it comes from the ground, or it has a mom, was kind of something that was described to me. And I was like, okay, all right, that makes sense. Comes from the ground or a tree, or it has a mom. You can have it. And for the most part. So I've been trying to follow that. Very few treats in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And so now if I have a treat, my body responds and I can tell. I had something 2 or 3 weeks ago. I had been doing really well for a week and a half, all real foods, whole foods, I should say. And then I had some fried chicken. I was like, I needed protein, but the only thing that was available was fried chicken strips. So I was like, okay, I'm trying not to have fried food, but I'll have that. It's still protein. That's good. I had a teeny tiny little piece of cake because I was, at a birthday party. So I was like, I'll have a little piece. And then I think the day before I had some homemade pizza, which again, I hadn't had any bread for over a week and a half. And day and a half later, massive stomach pains. Almost to the point I was like, if this keeps going, we may have to go to the doctor because I'm not exactly sure what's going on. I thought I knew what was going on. I highly suspected it was gas, constipation, and I just needed to be able to work it out and get some movement. But movement was actually hard. Any type of walking actually hurt. And so like, I'm like Googling, I know, don't do that. Because it's just like, the worst thing in the world this could be, or it could just be this minor thing. It's just causing you some discomfort. It did end up going away, but it definitely set me off track. And I knew that those were the likely culprits that caused that to happen. So whether it was one of those items, whether one of those items was actually bad and, caused some food poisoning type of issue, or whether just the combination of eating those three things and then also having not had any of those for well over a week, that my body was like, warning sign, right? So now I've been trying to avoid those things, trying to not have a lot of like breads and things like that, at least not too much. And it's been working. So I haven't really felt any digestive issues, though I did have that cookie and I noticed like it made me feel full for like too long, like after eating after that. So I don't know if the cookie did that or if there's something else potentially going on, but I did notice that, you know, um, when I used to drink soda all the time. I'm just giving like physical examples because these are things that I have personally noticed. And so when you make changes, when you reintroduce something, whether that's a food or maybe a stressor that you've been avoiding, and then you're faced with that stressor again, your body, you may be able to notice that thing a lot more than if it's just, constantly there. And so we tend to live in this state of, especially people who've experienced trauma, tend to live in this state of fight or flight. And so if they're always in fight or flight, having more trauma and more stress added on doesn't necessarily trigger, a physical response that's noticeable. Whereas if you remove it, right, if you get some healing, you get away from those triggers, you stop eating that bad food that's bad for you, then you reintroduce it, your body sends out the warning signs. Your body is like, whoa, where did that come from? I thought we got rid of that. What the heck is that? Get it out of here. So that happened for me with soda. So regular, soda pop, Coke, Pepsi, etc. I used to drink those. My favorite's cherry Coke, and every once in a while I may have it, but now when I have it, I know, right? My body is like, hey, stop that. It's not good. This makes you feel like crap. Cut it out. But it tastes so good. um, but when I removed soda, I never used to be able to drink those bubblies, right? They didn't have any sugar in them. I was like, this is disgusting. But when I removed the soda and the high sugar things from my diet, I was able to drink those things like the bubblies. And I've seen this with, my own family. My husband, used to drink soda as much as me, if not more. He has slowly gotten out of drinking regular soda and we've come down to the less sugary stuff. And, maybe eventually we won't have any more of those at all. Cause, really, from what I've learned, all the bubbles and things aren't necessarily good for you. So they taste good, and the healthier ones that have, 5 grams of sugar instead of like 25 grams of sugar, are, that's a better shift. The ones that have 0 sugar that don't have artificial sugars in them, are probably even better. But then you get into this idea of those bubbles, and I'm still learning about that, but I've learned that maybe they aren't the best thing for your digestion and for your system. So maybe more on that some other time when I've learned a little more about that. But when I was able to make that shift, I was able to tolerate and I actually enjoy those low sugar drinks, real sugar, not fake sugar, because my system was used to not having those high sugar things anymore. So then when I have the high sugar things, I have a sweet tooth. I love chocolate. I love desserts. But now if I have a really rich piece of like chocolate cake, like I can't have a whole piece of cake. Whereas before I'd have a whole piece of cake and then some. I can't do it anymore. I still am working on ice cream. I still love me some ice cream. I'm working on trying to find some healthier ways and making my own ice cream versus buying, ice cream. But even my husband has noticed, we used to eat any kind of ice cream, but there are certain kinds of ice cream that his body can tolerate versus other kinds. Not all ice cream is made the same. And a lot of the ice cream you buy in the store has a bunch of non-natural ingredients in it that are allowed that aren't listed on the labels. Yeah, you may learn some of this stuff when you kind of go down that rabbit hole. You'll learn things you probably don't want to know. So he's learned which ones kind of work with his body and which ones don't. Same with me. So it's paying attention to your body. And when you start to remove the stuff that's not good for it, whatever that is, and you start to implement those healthier things, again, whatever it is, and then at some point, those unhealthy things are going to come back in, your body will tell you because you will notice them now because it's like a filter. You've cleaned the filter. And so now when those bad things come in, the filter is able to tell when those things are coming in. Whereas when it was full and it was gross and it had all the toxins in it, right? It was just like, another toxin. Oh, what else is new? So just something to think about. If you're working on changing and you're wanting to drink less soda or eat healthier or be able to tell what's going on in your body, first we may want to consider, how do we remove some of that bad stuff? How do we set some boundaries so those toxic people or toxic environments, like emotionally toxic, those triggering environments aren't so triggering anymore? You may then start to be able to come down from that fight or flight. And when you're around those things again, your body's going to tell you, and you're going to be able to notice, and you're going to be able to do something about it. So, that's kind of all I had for you today. I wanted to talk about that because I personally experienced this just a few days ago, and I wanted to share that with you and share some of just my personal experience and knowledge and encourage you to be able to do the same thing, that you're not alone if you're trying. It does take time, and you can overcome those things. You can seek change, and you can notice the feelings and sensations that are happening in your body. You have to give your body a chance to do that, though. Thank you for joining me. I will see you again next week.